Well, good for you taking the fight. I can see the ups and the downs of taking a fight, being you're retired, surgery, wrestling base primarily in your career. What factors went into? I mean, I'm not going to try to ask you all the questions you've been asked before. I saw a lot of your interviews,
Yeah.
but what factors went into taking the fight aside from the money? Obviously, you're making a lot of money. That goes into a big, that'd be a big factor for me and everybody else. Obviously,
Yeah.
aside from that, what were the thoughts in your mind, like the thought process that like excited you about taking this fight and coming back and having this kind of this next fight, this next moment?
Yeah, I would say it was just like an opportunity that was too good to pass up.
Right.
And I love to compete, and so I always say like I have this big bookshelf right over here, and I always read a lot when I was growing up. And one of the biggest things people struggle to do in athletics is retire at the right time, and so
Right.
that was like something that was always in my head is like don't stick around, don't stick around, don't stick around. And when you're young, it's easy to say that and think that and know logically that that's the right decision. But when you retire from fighting, and I'm sure other athletics would be similar. Don't do those, so I don't want to comment, but I'm guessing it's similar. There's just some feelings that you can't get in regular everyday life. It's like, I mean, we'll just say for me and you, the feeling of walking to the cage is not a feeling you get in everyday life. And for me, because I think of competition really positively. Like I love it. Like if I could walk to the cage every day, I'd walk to the cage every day. Now I don't really want to like train and do all the other things
fight
that
camps,
comes along with being a pro fighter. But if I could walk to the cage, I'm in. Count me in, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can
So
see that.
I mean that's a big part of it, just missing the competition. The money was right, obviously. I don't know why people think he's good. Like I watched him and I'm like, he's not very good at boxing, and that's kind of like that's most of the main reasons.
The crazy thing is for me, like to break it down a little bit. I mean, it doesn't matter if he's good. Okay, so I mean, I get that he might have some technique. A lot of people say he has potential. He has this, that, and the other. But it doesn't matter. His level of experience in combat sports compared to you, especially, is so low.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand the difference of what you gain from having fights. I don't think Jake knows what he's getting himself into. I don't think he understands that mindset that you have and how powerful that is, even if he is technical, even if he's more technical than you, whatever the case, that mindset is a different mindset. And I think a wrestling pedigree is one of the hardest things to come into, not hardest things, but one of the hardest stringent pedigrees to have coming into MMA. I mean, I came from AK where we got obviously Kane and DC and Koscheck and Fitch and Habib and all these wrestlers. So I've been around wrestlers, even though I'm not a wrestler. But the reason they did so good was that pedigree and that level of your training in wrestling is ridiculous. And I'd say outside of MMA, that's the hardest thing. Even though I don't have experience, I'd say that's the hardest training you can have. And you're an Olympian, and that mindset, that fortitude, that mentality, when you get in there, like what your prediction is, the 7th round, TKO, KO, whatever.
Yeah.
That's why I agree with that so much, because it's like when he gets into deep water, he can't possibly know how he's going to react. He's never had to dig deep.
Can't. It's impossible.
Me included, when I first started out, in your first couple fights, and I don't even think he's had a couple fights. I mean, he fought a YouTuber and he fought a basketball player. He hasn't really had a fight yet. And until you have a fight and then get into trouble where you're in deep water and you have to dig deep, he doesn't understand that's the biggest pain of fighting. It's not getting punched. It's not getting kicked. For me, it's never hurt, those things. It's the digging deep. It's when you're tired, you're exhausted, you're in a dogfight. You don't know if your opponent is fresh or more fresh than you are, and he's going to come at you harder, and you have to dig deep and keep going forward and keep pushing yourself and use your heart. He can't possibly know how much heart he has, how much fortitude he has, and how many guys, even with 2 fights, have you seen be composed and relaxed and comfortable enough to conserve their energy. These guys that I've seen that have such little fights, they're balls of energy, man. They go in there, they got that pressure, they got that adrenaline, they blow their load in 1 round, 2 rounds, which we haven't seen again with him. So I'm agreeing with you 100% on the fact that I think that you can weather this and do good and just beat him up. And I think he's going to realize that the way he knocked out Nate is not the worst way to lose a fight. Just like Conor McGregor just got knocked out. Going out on your shield, I've been knocked out like that. Going out on your shield is not a cowardice way to go. Getting your ass beat by 2 or 3 rounds, that doesn't look so good, you know? What are your
No,
thoughts overall
that's
on that?
way worse.
Absolutely.
I mean, I always tell my kids, I coach wrestling, and did you? I know you didn't wrestle like at a high level. Did you wrestle at all ever?
No, just at AKA with
Okay.
these guys trying to take me down and slam me on my head.
Well, so you'll probably understand a little bit at least. It's not quite the same, but the most miserable thing in wrestling, in folk style wrestling, was when you're a bottom and the guy's just grinding your face into the mat, and there's just not a damn thing you could do about it, you know?
Yeah.
And so that mentality you learn from wrestling about how to deal with the adversity. And so we deal with that a lot as kids, right? And that's why I think, to your point, wrestlers do it so well. But yes, some little Disney Channel star who has kind of been pampered, he's not going to know how to deal with it. And actually, Mike, I've been having this bad premonition that he's going to, at a press conference or something, he's just going to feel the energy and he's going to realize he got in too deep and he's going to find a reason not to do it. Because I don't know about you, but especially like when I was a little kid, not a little kid, teenager, getting older, and starting to be around some high level wrestlers, there's just like this energy where you're like, I don't want to mess with that guy. Like that guy, if I mess with that guy, I'm going to end up on the wrong side.
What you're talking about.
You know, I know that happened in the college wrestling room to me. And by the time I got to fighting, I was pretty damn good at taking people down, so it didn't happen very frequently. But you probably know that feeling, and I'm worried that he's gonna at some point realize, oh shit, maybe this is not what I want to do.
But here's the thing: he's 100% gonna realize that. The only way he doesn't realize what he actually is in for in this fight is if he comes out and knocks you out in the beginning of this fight. And then you break that down. What are the chances of, I mean, you see these fights. He's not a great, okay, so he may have potential, but he's not a great technical boxer. He's definitely not experienced. He was winging punches at Nate. Nate was all over the place trying to throw punches back, so his hands were down. And he got that big knockout. But for him to knock you out in a 10-ounce glove, when you've spent your entire career fighting beasts that were having, throwing and hitting you with 4-ounce gloves and not knocking you out, you've never been knocked out with a punch. The chances of him to come in there and to think that, for him to think he can come in there and knock you out in like a round or less than Jorge, whatever the case, it's crazy to me. It's crazy.
The only time I ever got rocked in my career in training and/or fight at a fight, and so obviously it was at the probably the most inopportune time and probably the wildest way someone could get knocked out.
Yeah.
But that was the only time I've been rocked, and so I don't want to say I got a great chin, but it's like, well,
I mean, you obviously do.
Right, the time proves that because I've been in the cage 22 times or 21 times, and I've really only been rocked one time.
And you're talking about the Jorge fight. You've never been rocked before that fight, you're saying?
Never before that, and never in training ever.
And unlike you, I have been knocked out by a punch with a 4-ounce glove. But like, who in the world would not have gotten knocked out by a 100% unprotected bony knee to the face while you're rushing in and he's rushing to you? I mean, there's no one that couldn't have got knocked out. And the thing is like, you think Jake Paul realizes that, like Chell was saying, about the level of athleticism you have and fortitude and your pedigree. But, when you hear him talk, he's talking about, Ben, he acknowledges that your age, you're older, you're retired. He acknowledges your injury. He acknowledges, he makes fun of your striking, saying, Google your striking and look at this. Like, he's really downplaying. Like he really believes that aspect more than I think what he's really facing.